All right, everybody, welcome back to coverage here of the MagicOnline Champion Showcase here, season number 2 here in 2025. My name is Corey Baumeister, and today I have the luxury of being joined by a Hall of Famer. It's Reid Duke. Reid, how you doing, and what are you looking forward to today?
Hey, Corey. Thanks for having me. I am beyond excited here. I'm always pretty excited to cover a cool Magic tournament, but the MOCS it stands alone among the cool Magic tournaments, and it even has a special place in my heart because it's more or less where I got my competitive start all those years ago. Nice. I was the MagicOnline champion in 2011. So I just know what these players have had to go through in order to get here. I know, the special skill sets that they're going to put on display for us. And the Vintage Cube was great, and I think the modern rounds are going to be just as good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it best there. Being able to just get to this point where you're qualified, where you're in this event, is truly a feat. And what you've done it a couple times, right? You won 2021. You made it at least one other time, right?
Yeah, 2011 even. So it's an extra decade off there. But it feels like only yesterday. And I also played the year prior, 2010, the year after 2012, and then one more a few times later.
Okay, so just 4 times you've been a part of this, and you said it exactly right though. This kickstarts so many people's career that's like, hey, maybe they're really comfortable playing Magic Online, but maybe haven't bridged that gap to get to the professional scene. Well, if you top 2 this tournament, you are in the professional scene. You're queued for a couple of these events. So, yeah, it's a very special event. And, we're all honored to have you here, Reid. So we're going to be jumping in and checking out the modern decks that we're going to be seeing in action here. We just saw Tom White, McWinsauce, lock up that #1 spot here into the grand finals. Well, Tom needs an opponent, so we need to find out exactly what that is. But let's start with, instead of looking at the metagame of what decks we have, let's take a look at every single deck and see how these players approached the tournament. And we're going to start with Nathan Stoyer, and this is a spicy little Jeskai control list. Reid, walk us through this deck, and also let us know what kind of goes through your head when you're trying to submit a deck at this small style field. Is it like submitting a deck for a Pro Tour, or is it a little different?
Well, that's a great set of questions, Corey, especially in the context that we're just coming from Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, which was, of course, the biggest modern tournament of the year. So the question is, do you just pick a successful deck from the Pro Tour and run with it? Or do you try to engage in this leveling game where you're going to be a step ahead of the 7 particular competitors that are coming to this small field tournament? It's a great question, and I think you can justify some different approaches there. But what jumps off the page to me about Nathan's deck choice, this is more or less the same deck that Ely Cassis brought to the Pro Tour. That was kind of like a 1 of 1. Ely was the only player playing his particular take on Jeskai control, and he did great. He had 7 or 8 wins over 10 rounds of Modern. So Nathan, I think, works closely with Ely. Ely even shouted out Nathan as a big contributor to the deck list. So kind of putting 2 and 2 together, no surprise that he's going to come with this really finely tuned and successful version of Jeskai.
Yeah, gotta love it. And I like the change of pace that we're having here because, well, I made sure to bring up multiple times to Ely, how Nathan Stoyer, the last time he was in the MOCS, he ended up winning, which then got him to the World Championship, where he beat Ely Cassis badly in the finals. So, I like that you're evening it out, and instead of, these friendly daggers I've been giving to him, you're giving Ely his flowers. So I think we're going to have a good yin and yang mix here, Reid.
Yeah. It's Ely, he's a great part of the coverage team, and now that he is off the air, we can be sure to be a little nicer to him.
Exactly. There you go. And yeah, Ely, the last 4 Pro Tours has played a kind of deck like this, where it's kind of off the beaten path, and he's usually been very right about this. So Control did quite well at this last Pro Tour. I expect it to do pretty well here. So, all right, that's Nathan Stoyer's deck. Let's take a look at Zampa's deck. And Zampa just ended up being 1 win away here in our last Vintage Cube deck. So maybe looking to get a little bit closer here. And Eldrazi ramp, but this one's a little bit of a spicy one here, Reid.
Yeah, so this is okay. let's zoom out, and we could just say the Eldrazi in general are really powerful, well represented creature type and strategy that you can employ in Modern. Now, the way that you actually bring Eldrazi to the table can vary a lot. So Eldrazi Tron is kind of the most represented version at the Pro Tour, but I have a lot of respect for these green-based Eldrazi decks, and Zampa is going even a step further than that, hybridizing with the Basking Broodscale combo. So I see this as just a scary deck. Like, your opponent's playing this version of Eldrazi, there are a lot of bad things that can happen to you, and you're going to have to walk a tightrope of like defending yourself against this combo, preparing for their big mana plan, and just making sure you put a clock on them and get the game over with before they can set up that Emrakul, that combo kill, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that really stands out to me, I mean, number one, this is a much more hybrid list than I think we've seen before, but also 4 Vexing Bauble in the main. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't even seem stock in Eldrazi or these Broodscale lists. Is that correct?
No, that's not stock at all. And, it harkens back to the question you asked me a moment ago, Corey, like, how do you approach these small field events? So if you're thinking, I've got a bead on what my opponents are going to be bringing, one of the competitors that comes to mind, Yuuki Ichikawa, kind of famous for being successful with the Neoform deck. So if you're like, one of my 7 opponents is just cold to Vexing Bauble, maybe some of the other ones are going to be bringing like Ephemerate, Pitch Spell type, decks that have some vulnerabilities as well. You can totally make the judgment call to just main deck a sideboard card like that, and that could be a huge way to get a leg up in a niche event like this.
Yeah, so cool. I love the MOCS. I love the mind games that you can really see what the player was thinking by just looking at a list, which is really cool stuff and something we don't see even at the Pro Tour. Like, sure, you can metagame your deck for a certain deck, but at the Pro Tour, you're going to play against a lot of different things. At an RC, you're going to play against the Wild Wild West. So not really something you can do unless you're at a very small field like this. So let's take a look at our next player. This is going to be Alison Silva. Got the top 4 of the Vintage Cube draft, so got pretty close. And Izzet Affinity with the weapons manufacturing looks pretty close, if not identical, to Shuhei Nakamura's list, who went very deep in this last Pro Tour. Which was a lot of fun to see. I know you're a Shuhei fan as well, Reid.
Yeah, Shuhei was awesome. His deck was awesome. Affinity, this is one of the most exciting decks in Modern, especially in recent times. I think with, a lot of new weapons from the Modern Horizon sets, MOCS Opal coming off the ban list, people were really excited about Affinity, but it took a little while and a couple more cool releases like Pinnacle Emissary Weapons Manufacturing before people got these really hammered out high performance Affinity lists. Yeah. But we're there now, and these decks are scary. They attack you from a lot of angles, and it's no surprise that not just Alison, but several of our other competitors also brought Affinity.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm a little salty at MOCS Opal being unbanned because it got my other very powerful 1 colorless red enchantment banned, but, I won't live in the past here on that one, but RIP Breach. So let's take a look at our next opponent, or our next player here. This is Jessy. Jessy ended up playing Azorius Blink. Reid, you might be a little familiar with this one, huh?
Yeah, so this is the deck or the archetype at least, that I played at the Pro Tour as a Gabriel Nassif brew focused on White Orchid Phantom, the new package of Quantum Riddler and Starfield Shepherd, combining all these cards with Ephemerate. And this is a fun, powerful deck that has a few highly favorable matchups in the field. Like basically, if White Orchid Phantom is strong against your opponent, a ramp or a combo strategy, you're going to be really happy to be playing Azorius Blink. Now, the deck list has evolved a little bit from the Pro Tour, and some cool stuff about Jesse's version. Recruiter of the Guard as an extra way to find your key silver bullet creatures in the matchup. Containment Priest, which is really nice because it allows you to Felia your opponent's creatures, and then it'll just be exiled permanently because it can never come back if Containment Priest is on the battlefield. So a way to sort of like hate out opposing Blink decks at the same time as creating this additional way for you to remove opposing creatures, opposing permanents from the battlefield.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I got to share one of my favorite moments here from this last Pro Tour. We were at the player party, and, everyone's getting ready. I'm always talking to players and saying, hey, do you like your deck? How you feeling about Limited? All that kind of stuff. And I first talked to Nassif, who was building this deck. You maybe kind of jumped ship with him and started fine-tuning the deck with him. But I was just like, yeah, how's your deck, Hat? Like, do you really like this? And he's like, nah, we screwed this one up. I got a bad deck for this Pro Tour. And I'm like, oh no, like, that's no good. And I'm like, well, I'm sure you'll do fine. And then I go to talk to you, and I'm like, Reid, on the same deck. I was like, how do you like your deck? And you're like, this deck's great. I got Nassif that built this, one of the best deck builders of our generation. I'm feeling good. So the duality of your guys' comments were hilarious.
Yeah, Gab he's like, I think always really sort of modest about, or has anxiety that he's going to like train wreck the team by having us play one of his brews and having it not work out. But this was, true to form, this was just a really well-built deck. The Flagstones of Trocare, White Orchid Phantom thing is really powerful, and sort of a way, if Phantom is not a killer against your opponent, to still take great advantage of it. And of course, the Quantum Riddler, Felia, Ephemerate package is just gives the deck a really high power level in general. So I like what Jessy brought. I had a good experience with it, and hopefully the same will be true for Jessy in this event.
Yeah, both of you went very deep into that Pro Tour, so showed that this deck is definitely real, and some really cool stuff to be looking at going forward into Modern. So now let's take a look at our Vintage Cube champ here, Thomas White. See what we like here, and you were saying it, we got a lot of affinity in the field. Here is another one of those decks, and looks pretty similar to other builds. Anything really standing out here?
No, very similar. Again, in the mold of the Shuhei Nakamura weapons manufacturing version of Affinity. I do notice that Thomas White has his Emeries in the main deck, whereas sometimes you'll see them in the sideboard or not appearing at all, but kind of valuing that long game value plan, perhaps at the expense of the, cranial plating damage output angle that some other Affinity decks might be pushing harder.
Yep, makes sense to me. And then our last person here, we got Adam Wasburn here. Let's see exactly what he brought. And yep, you guessed it. Here is an Affinity. Now, I don't see the weapons manufacturing or the Claw of Gix thing, so a little bit different here.
Yeah, but I like this one too. Just very streamlined in terms of lots of 0 mana artifacts and lots of really potent payoff cards. Full 4 Kappa Cannoneers, Thoughtcast, Pinnacle Emissary, and Cranial Plating. This card has been a killer in Modern since the format existed. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it at a certain point.
Yeah, no kidding. It still just kind of pains me to only see one Cranial Plating in an Affinity deck, but, I totally get it. It makes a lot of sense to me. So we got 2 other deck lists to look over, but that is because we are saving those for last, as they're going to be our main feature. So let's take a look at our first round of Modern and see who we're going to be watching right away, and that is going to be Yuuki Ichikawa versus Alejandro Romero, and we'll start with Yuuki's list. Esper Blink, maybe a deck that it kind of hybridized over into all the Esper Blink decks over into, I would say, Esper Gorios. So we haven't seen this deck as much, I would say, Reid.
Right. So Esper Blink was a little bit before the Pro Tour. There was a lot of buzz about it because everyone was excited about Quantum Riddler being released, and there's just so much you can do within the Esper color spectrum in terms of like, do you want to play into combos? What about your card choices? How deep do you want to go to the Blink package? So what Yuuki has brought resembles closely the deck that Horiyuchi Makoto used to make the top 4 of Pro Tour Edge of Eternity.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a quick story about my Pro Tour experience. It started with, I really wanted to play Esper Blink. This deck just highly appeals to me, like Thoughtseize, Psychic Frog, Quantum Riddler. Those are all the most fun cards to play with. So I worked a lot on this deck. Couldn't quite get it to a spot where I was confident. And I ended up playing the, plain blue-white Azorius version.
Yeah.
Well, in round 15 of the Pro Tour, I was paired against Horiyuchi, and the round starts by you exchange deck lists, look over what the opponent has brought, and I'm like, wow, this version of Esper Blink is awesome. Like, how did he manage to fit all of these cool cards that I wanted to play with but couldn't find room in my version? And I saw he's got no Solitudes and only
I was blown away.
1 or 2 copies of Ephemerate. So I was like, maybe that's where I was wrong, where every single version that I built, it started with 4 Solitude, 4 Ephemerate, and then let's figure out the other 52 cards from there. But kind of like a groundbreaking take where you move away from Solitude, you reduce your dependency on having this high density of white cards, and instead you get to use Subtlety, Force of Negation, which gives you game against these combo and ramp decks in a way that the other Esper Blink decks don't have.
Yeah.
I'll also mention Horiyuchi kicked the crap out of me, like just demolished me in that match. So I'm a big fan of this deck, a big fan of Yuuki as well. So like one that I definitely want to keep an eye on. And of course, the big question is, in a field with several affinity decks, is that going to be a good matchup? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're going to find out. And one other thing I want to say about that, he also snapped off your 11-match winning streak at that point, right? Like, weren't you 1-3, 1-4 at this Pro Tour?
Yeah, my trajectory was a roller coaster. I was 1-4, and I won 9 matches in a row to be 10-4. And I did finally lose the last 2. I lost to Horiyuchi and then lost my round 16. But yeah, it was kind of fun for a while in there.
Yeah, that was really fun to watch your journey there. You ended up, of course, making day 2, which is what you really needed for Worlds, and ended at the top of the AMPs. So big congratulations to you there, buddy. But now let's take a look at Yuki's opponent here and see what we're going to be up against. Yeah, I was going to say, I think I counted 3 affinity decks so far. Well, here's the 4th. Half the players ended up bringing Is It Affinity. So, Reid, walk me through this deck again, and now that we've seen all 8 decks, who do you like the most, or is it kind of too hard to tell?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that is definitely going to be the story of the event. The 4 copies, fully half the field, playing Affinity in one form or another. Now Alejandro is again that Shuhei Nakamura style with weapons manufacturing, Claws of Gix as a really, really cool silver bullet you can find off of Urza's Saga. Less reliance on Thought Monitor. So instead, just kind of this plan of like build out a board, resilient threats, Kappa Cannoneer, weapons manufacturing. These help you circumvent Wrath of the Skies or spot removal spells, which would be some of the common countermeasures against affinity decks. So yeah, just a combination of an explosive deck, but also thoughtfully constructed backup plans, less vulnerability to any one key hate card. So, the affinity players are going to really put people to the test in terms of being prepared with not just a couple of, slapdash sideboard cards thrown in at the last minute, but do you actually have a fully fledged, coherent plan where you can take down Affinity at every step along the way. So I mentioned, Yuuki's deck. He's got some weapons, certainly some pest controls, a Clarion Conqueror in his sideboard, but it could be tough for Esper Blink to navigate a field with all these Affinity decks. What do you think?
Yeah, I would think the same, but also at the top 8 of the Pro Tour, we had this version of Esper Blink that was, in a best of 5 on the draw against Justin Shable with the Is It Prowess deck, and no Solitude, no problem, ended up winning it there. So I don't want to underestimate that Blink deck, because every time I do, it always really performs. And I guess we got to just head on down to the match to see who truly gets it going. So, Reid, if you're ready, let's go play here round number 1 here of Modern. Now, first, we want to take a peek at these players. And gotta say, we always have these gold-style numbers. And that just means you're the highest at all of these categories. Yuuki was the highest at the cube percentage, and is also the highest at number of years played as well as modern win percentage. Reid, I guess, do you think the years played translates into your overall win percentages in these formats?
It can. It definitely can. And I think you said it exactly right, Corey. Like, do not count out Yuuki and the Esper Blink deck, because the deck performs better than it might look on paper. It gives a lot of play to a skilled pilot. And, honestly, Yuuki, he's not just one of the best players in the field today. He's one of the best players in the world. He's a former MagicOnline champion. He is a arena set championship winner. He's a highly accomplished player. So just, this is somebody to watch. And even in a field where he might not be at his greatest advantage, he can make some crazy stuff happen, so don't count him out.
Absolutely. And just the nicest guy, you can, we don't speak the same language, but you can still kind of really see what a cool person he is, what a nice person, and what a pillar of the community he is to all the players here in Japan. So on the other side, though, no slouch at all. It's Alejandro, aka ALMTG, and I know I've lost to ALMTG plenty of times, and ALMTG ended up qualifying via the leaderboard, so it was Tom White as well as Alejandro that made it in. And arguably, that's the hardest way to get in, as you have to have a very consistent season. And then, of course, Yuuki ended up qualifying via the Modern Showcase qualifier. So let's jump on in here to the feature match and watch these players go at it. It's Modern time. It's the MagicOnline Champion Showcase. And let's get it going. Reid, how do you like these hands?
Well, one of the most important skills with the Affinity deck is knowing when to keep versus mulligan. Because it's a deck where the cards do very different things, right? Having a Tormod's Crypt in your opening hand versus having a Kappa Cannoneer, those cards are night and day, and you need to assemble the right mix. Pick your spots where you might keep a risky or speculative hand, but not keep hands that are just going to fail to deliver and not allow you to have that explosive start. So already Ale is in one mulligan, taking a closer look at the second hand where, he doesn't have the explosive start with a bunch of zeros, but he's already down to 6. So at this point, you start asking yourself, like, well, what needs to happen in order for this hand to actually be functional? Can I gamble on it? And he decides the answer in this case is yes.
Yep, makes sense to me. I mean, if we were able to find MOCS Opal or something, that would, of course, be amazing. But yeah, I don't think you can really mull any lower. But, kind of looking at big picture here as far as these MOCS, this MOCS goes, as these players get ready to more than likely have Yuuki play one of these 2-drops. Are you surprised that we don't see really any combo, Belch or anything after it just took down the Pro Tour?
Yeah, great point, Corey. Like, in addition to talking about the 8 decks that showed up, we should talk about what didn't show up, which is no Boros Energy, no Goryo's Vengeance, no Eldrazi-tron, no Belcher. So the 4 archetypes that were most represented at the Pro Tour, nobody brought them to the MOCS this weekend.
I mean, that is definitely saying something, right? Like, that's really telling. which is quite wild. So here we have the warped out Pinnacle Emissary, as well as the Drum to get a token, and then Pithing Needle. We see ALMTG sacrificing that Flooded Strand in response, and we'll see what Needle will name. Frog kind of feels like the default against a deck like this, right?
Yeah, so of course, you can name a fetch land, which is why the Flooded Strand very, very wisely got sacrificed in response. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of a blind name Pithing Needle as a general rule, but that's definitely what you sign up for with Affinity, where you just have to put your artifacts onto the battlefield when the time is right. So having to guess, yeah, Psychic Frog seems like probably the most sensible. I think maybe Yuuki had a couple copies of Teferi in his list, but if you can shut down the Psychic Frog and make it so that you can actually block it profitably, you turn one of their most potent threats into something that's a lot more manageable.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Marsh Flats would have been a pretty sick call, though, knowing what we know here. So Philia comes down. That can't get blocked by any of these tokens. And then we're seeing the Overlord. You know, this is quite the combo read.
Right. So an uncontested Philia is always a high indication that the Esper Blink deck is doing well. I mean, just at face value, like the Philia could attack and start blinking out tokens, and that's a pretty promising attacker already. But instead, what Yuuki has done is he's assembled perhaps the nastiest turn 2, turn 3 combo his deck can deliver, which is Impending Overlord of the Baelmerk, Blink Overlord of the Baelmerk. Now you have 2 additional creatures put into your hand from your graveyard, and you have this 5/5 ready to attack with the devastating attack trigger as well.
Yeah, and I gotta say, just think if these subtleties were, you know, solitudes. When you're trying to deal with a Kappa Cannoneer, where you have to pay 4 for the ward, you know, Yuuki still could have done that next turn, but being able to subtlety this and get that kind of time walk effect seems so much better than Solitude. I was also losing my mind when I saw this list at the Pro Tour not playing Solitude. I felt like that was a sacred cow of the deck, but man, you just get surprised by subtlety left and right. And that's against a matchup like Affinity, where maybe it's not at its 100% best. You get subtlety, you know, on like an Allosaurus Rider or something, and all of a sudden, you know, you pretty much can't lose against Neoform.
And it also, it works towards this sort of like checkmate endgame plan that Yuuki, he's actually assembled it as early as turn 4, but you get to subtlety the Kappa Cannoneer, your opponent passes the turn, you attack with Overlord of the Baelmerk, you just pick up that same subtlety again. How do they ever get back in the game?
Yeah, no kidding. That is, that's a Splinter Twin situation if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, it's like Splinter Twin, but extra slow and painful.
Yeah, so it's Plow Under Eternal Witness, huh? Are we going to go that far back?
There you go.
So we did a Thoughtcast here to start it off. We can still cast the Kappa Cannoneer if we want to. Almost assuredly going to be what we see. You can also weapons manufacturing first and start going off with that. Basically, it's that, or do you want to make a construct? That seems like the decision point that Alejandro is at.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, given that you can't really contest the Overlord and the Philia, what would be your plan here?
Yeah, I would think I would be under an assumption that my Kappa is probably not going to work. I think step 1 to me is find a way to deal with Philia, because I feel like I just can't win the game. So I think based on this list where it's subtlety and not solitude, my plan would be maybe play the 0 drops. I'm not 100% sure on that. Probably not. But then just say go after combat, after Philia does the blink, try to put a construct out there and get in front of the good dog, or get in front of the Overlord. You got to break up one of those two things before you can successfully hope to resolve a Kappa Cannoneer. What would your play be?
Well, I really like the way you outlined that, where like casting a creature in your own main phase is vulnerable to a lot of the things that Yuki's deck can do, like blinking with the attack
Yeah.
trigger, subtlety to counter it. However, the instant speed construct play, that at least might capitalize on the fact that this Esper list has a little bit less removal with no solitudes. So that makes sense. And then what would be a go-to pick for chapter 3 of Urza's Saga? Is it
Yeah.
Claws of Gix to set up for a weapons manufacturing later?
It feels like it to me. Get Claws of Gix, and then you have the ability to deal 4 to one of these things. Maybe kill a fly or something like that. It seems like the best avenue, but kind of depending on what you draw as well. If you draw Thoughtcast, maybe you want to get a little bit more mana going. All that being said, I think the one of Claws of Gix seems like what I would be trying to do. But all that being said, it still is a little brutal here for Alejandro. So big thanks here from Yuuki. And I mean, this tournament structure, it's brutal. You are playing 2 different 8-person pods essentially, where if you lose one of those matches, and between these 2 players, neither of them is named Thomas White, where you're already through to the finals. So any match loss at this point, and the world stream is dead for them.
Yeah. So you want to take great care, especially with the 2 decks that we're watching. You got to give them a lot of credit for comeback potential. If you make one, even if you get ahead, you can make one wrong step, leave the door open for the affinity deck to land a Kappa Cannoneer or pop off with weapons manufacturing, and you can really regret it. So the player's just going to take their time and try to execute precisely, even when you see things going pretty well for them.
Yep, makes sense here. And having to tap this Thopter down right away to then use the mana to be able to make a construct with the Saga. The Saga is going to be a 4/4, and it is going to have that favorable block as of now on the Philia, but it all really depends what we can bring back with this Overlord, if there's anything. No Solitudes in the deck, so whether, we've been saying the praises of subtlety in a situation like this. If there was a Solitude, this would be absolutely devastating as well. Instead, the construct gets to eat the good dog, and a 2-mana 1/2 without any other text comes on down, and also representing another Philia at end step here for Alejandro.
Yeah, so that Pithing Needle blind name on Psychic Frog coming in big here. I'll mention, if it comes to it, Yuuki can probably set up a single turn where he blinks the Pithing Needle with a Felia attack. So the Psychic Frogs, could be a little bit more meaningful than just simple 1/2s, which is what they look like right now. But yeah, I mean, that's really taking a very scary threat down to a manageable level with the Needle.
So now with Chapter 3 going on the stack, the fact that if we get Claws of Gix, we cannot cast weapons manufacturing here. The drum was a pretty poor draw here. Any untapped land would be great. That being said, these affinity decks don't play a ton of those. So what do you like here to get from the Saga with that Claws of Gix play? Maybe not looking as good.
Yeah, so I guess this is a moment where you decide what angle do you want to push to try to win the game. Claws of Gix would be leaning on the weapons manufacturing. A sort of default play that Affinity will often make is they get one of their equipment, either Shadow Spear or Lava Spur boots, to go with the big construct tokens. And it looks like this is going to be Ether Spellbomb, thinking that perhaps bouncing the Overlord or breaking up a Felia loop on a key turn might be actually the thing that Ale needs most in order to equalize this game.
Yeah, that actually seems pretty nice. Depending on what Yuki does, that spellbomb can break up something. But another one of the lines Yuki's going to have available here is that end step Philia, and then you can always play Emperor Bones, and let's say you could eat a Philia from the yard. That way, if Alejandro does say, "Hey, I don't want you to just kill one of my constructs here," by attacking with the good dog here, Philia, that if you go to bounce it, well, in response, Yuki could activate Emperor Bones to then just still have a Philia coming into attack.
Yeah, great point.
So big attack here for a good chunk of 9. And Yuki doesn't have great blocks here. Besides chump block, are you ever considering chumping with this frog to soak up 8 damage?
Good question. I guess it depends what you mean by considering. I would definitely consider it because I'd be worried about, you could die from weapons manufacturing, you could die to a flyer, you could die to Shadow Spear giving trample. So a lot of the times, the way I think about a chump block decision is I ask myself, am I going to have this choice later? And if I'm confident, well, hey, I could go down to 7 life and then just block next turn, I'll usually take that path. But here, Yuki being extra careful and thinking, well, I don't want to have to leave extra blockers in the face of this Ether Spellbomb. I don't want something crazy to go wrong and allow Ale to steal this game away from me by attacking my life total too directly.
Yeah, I gotta say, ALMTG has played this game quite well with the information that we know. Like, it felt very tempting at a lot of different stages of the game to go Kappa Cannoneer. And I think at any point, if Ale did decide to do that, I think it would have worked out horrifically bad for him, where I think he really put himself in a position to win this game.
It's so easy to kind of get that panic feeling where you're like, oh my God, high stakes match. I'm behind against Overlord of the Baumeister. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then you talk yourself into, well, I just need to take a big chance and have this Kappa Cannoneer resolve.
Yes.
That would have been tempting. And like you said, I think if at any point on any turn, Ale had made that judgment call, it would have been over because it would have gotten subtletied. Then Yuki would have untapped with this clean path to do whatever he wanted. And it would have been enough for him to take over the game. But instead, keeping that cool, playing around the likely subtlety, navigating the game to, reduce his vulnerability to that play. And we actually have a very, very close, interesting game on our hands as a result.
We really do. So it looks like Yuki agreed with me on that exact play to get Emperor and have a backup dog just in case the first dog gets dealt with. And now we get at this situation where do you pop the spell bomb and force Yuki to use his mana up here and still put a dog into play and then get rid of that construct, or do you go to combat and then for sure lose one of these constructs in the process? Really tough spot here, Reid.
Yeah, very tough. If you bounce Philia, you do sort of make your opponent commit the mana. Oh wow. This is door number 3 bouncing the Overlord.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, attacking Overlord of the Baumeister is, well, just as terrifying as all the Overlords attacking you. I mean, it doesn't take too long for the value to snowball out of control when you start to connect with that. So, goes with Philia to be able to just deal with one of these constructs straight away. Meanwhile, we have another construct that can hit you in a second. Weapons manufacturing off the top. That was not exactly what Ale wanted here.
Right. So now the most meaningful permanent on Alejandro's side of the battlefield is the 6/6 construct token.
Yeah,
probably not going to get the job done all on its own, given the circumstances. And again, we face that same situation where you could make a play towards this Kappa Cannoneer, but if it gets subtletied, you're very far behind.
Yeah, but I kind of agree with ALMTG here, even though I don't think it's going to work out great. We're seeing the improvising here, where the other option is play weapons manufacturing, tap. Oh yeah, I honestly totally forgot about this creature. So I forgot about that as an option. That is still going to play into the subtlety. And then this Overlord can then get back subtlety once again. But outside of Kappa Cannoneer, the just weapons manufacturing, play a drum, get one of those artifacts. That play also didn't look very good this time around.
Agreed. Yeah, a little bit of the clunky side of weapons manufacturing, especially like you put 2 copies in your deck, you're thinking probably not ever going to actually draw both copies. But yeah, having them, the price
Sometimes
of a non-artifact. Yeah, the price of a non-artifact is so high in Affinity. And in the end, it was a combination of the unanswered Philia and a little bit of a clunky draw on Alejandro's side. But Yuuki's able to take that first game.
Yeah, absolutely. Writing was on the wall there. When you lose that second construct, it's going to be very, very difficult to come back. So, all right, looking at sideboards, we see Yuuki slamming in 3 pest controls. You got to love that. Anything else you really love from either side?
The Clarion Conqueror. It's basically a 3-mana version of Stony Silence for the matchup. So I would say those are his 4 most impressive cards. Beyond that, it's going to be Yuuki just kind of balancing out his supporting cast. Mystical Dispute makes a lot of sense since it can counter a Kappa Cannoneer or win a counter spell battle. I could imagine exchange where Alejandro tries to use, say, Metallic Rebuke or the Detect Intruders to counter a key pest control, and then Yuuki gets to play back with Mystical Dispute.
Makes sense to me. What do you think about the decision to cut Overlords here instead of maybe cutting Fatal Push? Fatal Push against Affinity, definitely hit or miss. Doesn't actually kill Kappa Cannoneer, even though that card usually costs 1. It is, of course, 6 mana value, and it doesn't have a lot of great targets in there. Is that surprising to you at all, or?
It's non-obvious to me. So, yeah,
Okay.
Often when you play against this Affinity deck, you have like your small handful of cards where you're like, well, this is great every time. I want to draw this as often as possible. And then it's a lot of sort of judgment call. Like Fatal Push, to your point, doesn't answer their key cards. Or, hey, I'm going to Fatal Push a Construct token, but I'm getting like 3-for-1 by an Urza Saga. That's not a great feeling either. On the other hand, sometimes you just need like any card that you can play for 1 mana that helps you keep pace against the fast and explosive Affinity deck. So how to exactly round out these corners and choose your non-essential card slots is really tricky and takes a lot of experience in the matchup. Ideally, to make these choices the best way you possibly could, you'd have played both sides of the matchup to see exactly how things are likely to play out.
Hey, that's fair. And I mean, hey, you're a part of one of the best testing teams here in the world. And when you get ready for a pro tour, that's exactly what you're doing all day, kind of every day, right? Is seeing everything from every angle.
Yeah, and that actually it reminds me of something that did happen in my pro tour testing. I think I was playing maybe Boros Energy, and I sideboarded out some of my Galvanic Discharges against Affinity, and my teammate Noah Ma, who had played the matchup a lot, he was like, no, don't do that, you just need the 1 mana interaction. So just to illustrate our conversation, it's like your instinct about, on paper, the cards that may or may not be the most important needs to be tempered with, well, I've actually played the matchup, I've seen how this plays out, and I know that even though this isn't a key card, it's an important piece of the recipe that you want to have access to.
Okay, makes sense to me. And meanwhile, we have Alejandro kind of popping off here. We played a bunch of artifacts, got the Thoughtcast down for 2 mana, and actually had Metallic Rebuke up to be able to fight over that, but did not. Is that surprising to you at all, or do you like it?
It's surprising to me, and I like being surprised. I'll put it that way. I haven't made up my mind about if it's a genius play or a sketchy play, but I definitely like when someone does something kind of thoughtful, unintuitive like that, and maybe in this case, Alejandro just greatly wants to protect against the turn 2 Psychic Frog or Overlord of the Bailmerk, or heck, even Pest Control would be really devastating here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking about plays kind of outside of the box, consigned to memory on Chapter 2 of Urza's Saga. So, Reid, this isn't the most, common interaction, but it is an effective one. What happens here when you consign the second chapter?
Okay, so the Saga always gets the level up counter. It always moves to Chapter 2. And upon moving to Chapter 2, you get a triggered ability that Urza's Saga gains this middle ability of creating constructs. So what Yuuki is doing with Consigned to Memory is he's trying to stop the Urza Saga from gaining the construct generation ability, and then still next turn the Saga will continue to progress as normal, but Alejandro will just never have the ability to make those devastating huge constructs.
Yeah, well said. A really nice play. And look at this discipline here from ALMTG. Really thought about it. Has 6 permanents. Can't even make a construct now. So you got to think like, well, if I can't make a construct, might as well jam Kappa Cannoneer. Decides not to. And it would not have worked out for him if he did with that one Mystical Dispute on the other side. And now there's 2 of them. So I'm surprised he didn't go for it. I for sure would have jammed and just been really sad on the flip side.
Yeah, exactly. Again, there's temptation, especially a high pressure situation, to just kind of go for it. You don't want to overthink yourself. But in this case, it's, he's thinking at exactly the level he should be, which is playing around both Mystical Dispute and Subtlety. And if you look at Yuki's hand, not only is he prepared with these reactive, counterspell type plays, he also specifically wants to empty his hand so that he can start using Quantum Riddler to rebuild and get ahead.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that is kind of the low-key hidden awesomeness of this style of deck, is you have so many pitch spells, so many free spells, where that you are sure you're 2-for-1ing yourself, like we're going to see now with this Force Negation on Blood Moon, but man, the damage is really mitigated when your Quantum Riddler is 2 mana draw 2, but then also 5 mana draw 2 as well, where you're paying 7 mana to draw 4 cards and have a 4/6. So Quantum Riddler, truly by far the best card from Edge of Eternities, but just one of the best cards here in Modern now, really quickly.
That was a really important turn.
Yeah.
I like the way Alejandro played it, given, of course, the asymmetrical information. As it turns out, it's exactly what Yuuki wanted to happen. He's like, okay, let's exchange resources, have my opponent tap out, and then warp the Quantum Riddler to draw 2 and set up for next turn.
But it's like, what's the flip side? What is ALMTG supposed to do? Even with perfect information, would he have just said, okay, equip this boots to my Ornithopter, take 13 more turns, bro?
Yeah, good question.
Right?
I mean, with perfect information, maybe he would play the Blood Moon and then just not fight over the counterspell so that he gets to hold up his point. Metallic Rebuke. But, again, it's like at a certain point, it's like a crazy conversation to have, because you don't get to know what cards your opponent's holding, and you just have to make plays that make sense across the likely outcomes of what you're facing.
Makes sense to me. And here was a second Kappa off the top, and that was met with that Mystical Dispute. Playing against the Affinity deck, most of the time you think Affinity, you think a lot of colorless spells, Arcbound Ravagers, those kind of thing. Well, that is a little different than the Affinity deck that we're looking at. There's a lot of blue cards, so Mystical Dispute is actually a phenomenal card up against this style of deck. So, all right, we picked up Pinnacle Emissary, and this is kind of the first scenario where Alejandro, this game, is going to play something that actually matters. This is
Yeah,
huge. Kappa plus the Thopter. I mean, big game here.
I'm like floored by how effective Mystical Dispute was in this game. 3 Mystical Disputes drawn for Yuuki, 3 Mystical Disputes put to amazing use. On the other hand, Alejandro just fought through them. It's like, all right, 3 Mystical Disputes, a Subtlety, a Consign, a Force of Negation. I made you use them all, and now the dust settles. I actually have Kappa Cannoneer on the battlefield. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, because that's the thing with these affinity decks. Like, sure, they have these absurdly powerful draws. You're doing a lot of really cool stuff. And speaking of cool stuff, nice interaction there with that Riddler trigger on the stack. Discard 1 card, so instead of draw 1, you draw 3. A nice interaction with Psychic Frog here. But back what I was saying about the affinity decks, like, you have these amazing draws that go really, really fast. But then when you get to the late game, if you're not top decking Thoughtcast, you're not top decking Thought Monitors, you could also just be top decking Memnites and MOCS Opals, and just leading me to think the top of the deck from the affinity decks is much worse than the top of the deck from Yuuki's deck.
That's right. That's one of the great things about the Esper Blink deck is it's just all value. Like, all of your cards are so strong in this situation where you have enough mana to cast them and you start getting your synergies rolling. It's mostly the question of keeping pace in the early turns that's concerning for Esper, but once you can get this far, as Yuuki has, I think you're a happy camper.
Yeah. I would have to agree with you, and wow, this is pretty interesting. I suppose not that interesting. I was going to say this Boots didn't equip to the Pinnacle Emissary to give that haste, but the Frog just could have discarded a couple of cards and kind of sidestepped this. So now we have the option of sacking the Polluted Delta, and since we do have Revolt being triggered, you could just kill Pinnacle Emissary or play the best dog here, and pretty tough to deny playing Philia here.
So very, very important turn. Yuuki is at 5, on track to very likely die to an unblockable Kappa Cannoneer next turn. So he has to ask, can I gain life? Can I answer the Kappa Cannoneer? Or can I get my opponent dead? All of those are pretty questionable, but you better believe he's going to take his time and puzzle it out and see what his best chance is.
So, number 1, are you like 100% discarding a second Philia so that you can draw 2 cards in your draw step?
Yes,
I would
definitely
on an Ornithopter, huh?
I would definitely want to draw 2 here, which, exactly as you mentioned, Corey, you could accomplish either by discarding the Frog or casting the Fatal Push. And then you might just dump your whole hand, cast another Quantum Riddler, and I wonder if you're close to getting up to, let's see, the Frog would have to be a 10 power. I think we're not
feels like it's
quite
a little
there.
Too far, but God, maybe. Okay, well, here's a line. Oh, I guess you need to clear out a blocker. I was going to say, if you Riddler, discard down to 1 card, Riddler draws you up to 4 cards, discard down to 1 card again, when Philia attacks, blink out the Riddler, draw 3 more, and hope that you find interaction for 1 more blocker, and then maybe that's enough cards. I mean, that is a lot of cards, right? Because you would essentially be drawing 6, you'd be +6 from this equation, so 6, 7,
yeah,
8.
One problem is the Philia doesn't return it till the end step, so it's not in time to get the extra damage from Psychic Frog.
Yeah, that's a good dog, but not that good of a dog to be able to blink it in right away. So, as far as I'm seeing, we need to Riddler and find some answer, but man, like, that is the problem with not playing Subtlety. Like, normally you're like, Subtlety looks amazing here. Not really the case. I don't know what we're looking for here. Most of the time you can just think, hey, I'm just going to block this Kappa Cannoneer, hope that you don't top deck an artifact, but with Urza Saga, the artifact is going to happen,
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, you could try to block the Cannoneer, but that would require consigning the Urza Saga trigger like last time, and
Yep.
Alejandro not finding an artifact to cast. So, yeah, Yuuki has a lot of options here, but none of them are, none of them jump off the page as obvious winning lines.
Yep, because one other thing you can do, I mean, you could try to blink out Kappa, pay the 4 ward, but it comes back in, just large enough. The other line that you can get besides playing Quantum Riddler is if Frog connects as well, that's another card you draw. So you could deal with this Ornithopter, just accept that you are not going to win the game this turn, and go from there. But okay, let's see how this works, because it must be the good dog trying to blink out Ornithopter to draw, right? Because if you don't draw a card here, you're not going to get out of this.
Yeah, so I think Yuuki was trying to draw consign there for the, that long shot play that we were outlining of actually keeping the Kappa from attacking.
Now, Clarion Conqueror, does that do anything?
It's not going to stop the Urza Saga from being activated, will it? I think it says creatures and artifacts and planeswalkers.
Creatures and artifacts, yeah. I wasn't 100% sure. I was just about to, do a double check here with Clarion. But as it stands, it looks like Kappa's going to take this game down.
That's amazing. Yeah, what a game. I thought Yuuki was totally in the driver's seat. He had a lot of really favorable exchanges early, but then he was just not well equipped to deal with the Resolved Kappa Cannoneer, which, to be fair, most people aren't. That card is really, really devastating when it hits the battlefield.
Yeah, and I want to look back at the one turn, and it easily could have been correct. I'm not 100% sure, but the subtlety, it just looked like Yuuki had all the tools. So you got to look back on a game like that and think, where did that go wrong? If I'm Yuuki, and I think the one spot where it could have maybe went wrong was that somewhat aggressive subtlety on the Pinnacle Emissary. Maybe holding that for Kappa number 2. That's the only thing I could have thought of, but I don't know. What do you think of that line, Reid?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think part of the motivation there was he felt comfortable with an unfavorable resource exchange because of the Quantum Riddler in hand. But as it turned out, he just really needed that subtlety on the key Kappa Cannoneer turn.
All right, well, now you know what happens when you're playing on Magic Online 100% of the time. When you're up a game, you're in control of game 2, and you're absolutely dominating, and then you lose a close game 2, you mulligan to 6 at least every single game 3. Is that how it works for you too?
That is definitely the Magic Online hallmark. Just for the extra pain points. But
so
thankfully, Yuuki has a functional 6.
Yeah, a functional 6, but also, I mean, Alejandro just didn't play a single artifact when you could have turned on Mox Opal, cast Weapons Manufacturing, or Thought Casted there, but decided to do none of those things. Is that wild to you?
It is wild, yeah. Tons of discipline, and it's really a good case in point of understanding what matters in the matchup, where yes, my deck is fast and explosive. That's one of the reasons I choose Affinity. But this exact matchup, this exact game, this exact situation that I'm facing, there's not a sense of urgency. And in fact, rather than play into Yuuki's open mana, maybe I should just wait one turn to have a more robust move, focus on this weapons manufacturing that's really tricky for Yuuki to deal with, and I think it's going to work out well.
It worked out so well. I mean, look at what Alejandro cast on turn 2. Weapons manufacturing, which doesn't get consigned, doesn't get disputed, and well, those were both of the cards that Yuuki had. So really, taxed Yuuki's mana as much as humanly possible this game. And when you're playing these Esper Blink decks, you almost never run out of steam. So if the way that you do beat this deck is by forcing Yuuki to not be mana efficient and kind of go over the top of him. And so far, I've been incredibly impressed with ALMTG so far. He's done a great job of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Really, really, really good match. Good Magic being played so far. So let's talk, Corey, about what the weapons manufacturing actually means, because it's not super well. I guess what I should say is, from what we're looking at right now, Alejandro can't actually sacrifice the munitions tokens. So
yeah,
what it means is he has now an engine to generate a lot of artifacts for the purposes of, you know, affinity, construct tokens, Kappa Cannoneer, whatever it might be. It means if he ever gets his Claws of Gix onto the battlefield, he might win the game effectively immediately.
Yes.
It also means that Yuki's best sideboard card, his 3 copies of Pest Control, that's going to pretty quickly become uncastable, because he'll just die if he kills 6 munitions tokens with Pest Control. The game is just going to be over in favor of Alejandro.
Yeah, I actually have a really funny story from the Pro Tour, where I was, I believe it was round 13 or 14, Ginky, Johnny Gutman, was playing against Shuhei, and Ginky just picked up his second loss in the tournament, 12-2, tournament leader still. And he's just sitting at the table after a loss, just like staring at the table, like very puzzled. So I went up and I was like, hey, you know, everything okay, man? And he's just like, dude, Shuhei's deck's insane. How am I supposed to beat this when my whole plan is to pest control him post-board, and then I take 1,000,000? And I go up to him, I just like put my hand on his shoulder. I was like, yeah, he's built different. I don't know what to tell you, man. And he's just perplexed. He's like, Shuhei's just the GOAT. Yep. I just thought it was incredibly funny and figured you would appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. And that's like one of the best things that can happen in a Magic tournament. And, you know, specifically the Magic Pro Tour is sometimes where you'll see this the most often, where you have a particular moment where you're just like, wow, my opponent was way ahead of me. They knew exactly what I wanted to do, and they just dismantled it and blocked off that path for me ahead of time. And I mean, that's like a lot of what tournament Magic is about, is knowing how you can be a step ahead instead of a step behind. And weapons manufacturing is a great example.
Yeah, I mean, you know, back in my day, the last time I was on a testing team, well, it was with you for Ultimate Genesis. And, you know, those moments where it's like round 5 at a Pro Tour, where one round of Constructed has been played, where you kind of start talking to your team and you're like, oh, man, like, hey, this team is doing this thing. Is that busted? Do we have a plan for it? You know, you have a brain trust where you get together and think like, okay, number one, as a Magic fan, how this cool thing that another team is doing, like, it's just cool. You want to appreciate it. But also the next level, you're like, how do we as a team pivot and kind of maybe go against our sideboard plan and stuff like that? And just really shows how awesome the Pro Tour is, and just how cool it is when someone truly does do it like that.
Totally.
So getting caught up to the game here, we had a nice little turn here from Yuuki where we had the Warped Riddler draw a couple cards, play that Psychic Frog, blink Riddler back in, and there was one choice that Yuuki made. Didn't want to discard a Subtlety to turn that into 2 cards. I think that is a big decision point that we shouldn't really overlook. That's how much he values Subtlety here. And then the flip side, ALMTG, having a very unimpressive, kind of sad turn there to ship it back to Yuki's side.
However, Corey, the most meaningful card there is Urza's Saga, which is going to slowly and steadily tick up towards Chapter 3, at which point it can get that Claws of Gix and blow up all these munitions. So yeah. Yuki's doing really well. He has a lot of great things going for him, but he's got to feel like he's on a little bit of a clock to make something big happen before Alejandro sets up Claws of Gix weapons manufacturing.
And I mean, this is the opportunity where, you know, the absolute biggest train wreck thing could happen where you have complete equity with your friends forever. And that's if you draw the one of Claws of Gix next turn or the following turn where it would get force negationed. And that's like the only way to get rid of it. That would just be so devastating. Yeah, that would be a huge tilt, that's for sure. Okay, Otawara on Psychic Frog here to be able to bounce that, to not get some extra card advantage going. Really no way to play around that one at all. And now with Philia blinking, do you start, you know, do you start trying to just blink the Riddler to draw more cards, or... I mean, I guess you're not blinking away those munitions tokens, huh? That's probably not a great idea.
No, you don't want to blink a munitions token. You can't blink Urza's Saga because it is a non-land permanent. I feel like you kind of want to just get the 7 damage here. Sometimes you make the judgment call that the cards are more important, but not in this case. Oh, and wow, Corey, notice the black mana situation. Yuuki couldn't even replay the Psychic Frog.
Yeah, we just both noticed that at the same time. What an absolute blowout there, as that Fatal Push was not worth not having a frog in play. You know, like the Philia was already answering, in air quotes, the Ornithopter to just blink it out. Now, when it comes back in, it does get an extra munitions token there. But, I mean, if Yuuki could have foresaw this stuff happening... he would have very much just said, yeah, I will not Fatal Push that Ornithopter and recast the Frog for sure, or play Subtlety.
Yeah, and it's like he can't play anything. his mana is just going to fully go to waste. I guess he can force a negation this Lava Spur Boots, which I might choose to do.
Oh, I would for sure. Get it out of there. That's one less munitions token to deal with. And like you said, you're not using your mana on anything else, but look how different this game would be. This game would be over if Yuuki didn't play that Fatal Push. So I'm starting to think that was maybe a pretty big blunder, because just being able to flash into Subtlety, you know, you can then force a negation, this Sink into Stupor, and then you have that last 7 points in the air. And now the munitions tokens, they're going to be out. That could be a devastating, maybe, misplay here from Yuuki.
Yeah. I've been really impressed by Otawara in the Affinity deck. The first time I picked up Affinity, I was like, oh, you know, it's just a fancy island, right? It's just flavor text on your land that you're never actually going to use. But then the way it plays out, like Affinity is so starved for interaction with the opponent's battlefield that often like that one key turn where you get to bounce their best permanent is exactly what you need to get over the finish line. That, and it's really hard to play around Otawara. I mean, you can't counter it. And it's really hard to see coming because Affinity doesn't have very much interaction. So even though Yuuki is like such an elite player, like I totally see how that was just not something that he could have easily predicted on that turn.
Yeah, because he even had, you know, the Otawara at home, the Sink into Stupor on lockdown, because he had that force negation. So that was really the one card that punished him, but punished him it did, because now, I mean, now what do? You attack with Philia here and get it eaten by the Construct. And Alejandro does have the advantage here of being at 7 and not 6, because you have those 2 Fiery Islets where you have to, you know, pretty much turn those sideways. But all things are pointing to Alejandro is gonna have a Claws of Gix in play next turn, and that could be very, very scary.
Yeah, so Yuuki is at a high life total himself, not dead instantly to the munitions, but I mean, munitions can hit creatures. Claws of Gix gains life. So this game's going to get really interesting as soon as that Chapter 3 of Urza's Saga pops off.
Totally agree. So we're going to see that losing 2 life. So, I mean, the other big disadvantage is having 2 Fiery Islets here. Those are turned, air quotes, off. You know, you can gain some life with the Gix, but if you're going life neutral with this, you can't do any play like, okay, sacrifice 4 munitions, gain 4, hit you for 8 and then take 4 off the Riddler, that kind of line is off the table.
Yeah, great point. So both players' life totals highly relevant here. Alejandro hoping to thread the needle and get ahead in the race.
Okay, now is the big question. What do you do from here? You have 5 shocks at the ready, so, you know, you can just safely get rid of Riddler. Of course, you can just aim 10 damage upstairs, but is there a way to find lethal by clearing blockers here? It doesn't look like it to me.
No, because you need at least 2 munitions to clear each blocker. I
And
wonder
that's
if...
simultaneously shrinking the construct as well.
Oh, yeah. So I wonder if there's something where, like, you force a chump block by threatening all the damage from the munitions, but then you actually wind up turning the munitions after Yuki's creatures.
Yeah, like
it's tough
this
to...
doesn't even accomplish that, right? The 6/6 doesn't even force a chump block in this scenario.
Correct. At least the Felia is taken care of, so the construct token's not going to get killed for free.
Yup. And the one problem I'm noticing is Alejandro can gain 2 up to 5, preventing Riddler from killing him, and deal 4 damage to Psychic Frog without taking a pain from Alejandro. But if Yuuki has the wherewithal to discard his whole hand, that would be enough here. So I think the way it works out, and we're going to see how this plays out, if Yuuki says no blocks, and if Alejandro goes for the play of try to kill the frog, and Yuuki just says, yes, I will discard my whole hand, I think the match is over. I think no matter what, the ball's in Yuki's court. If he plays this right, I think he wins this game. But it's very complicated.
Wow, so fascinating how you pointed out, Corey, sacking the munitions, pumping down the construct. Yeah. I'm wondering, like, did this have to be declared as an attacker before killing Felia in order to make it more scary and force Yuki to commit the blocker? It's also complicated by the fact that because of the way Urza Saga Chapter 3 popped off, Alejandro had a mana floating that he could ill afford to let that go to waste. So he kind of was committed to doing something with the munitions. Just so complicated on so many levels.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And okay, so now as it stands, it looks like Yuuki is presenting 2 lethal threats. And okay, this was 2 lethal threats, but also drawing 2 extra cards here, leaving that dispute for any possible sink into stupor or anything. And you know, that's just gonna be it. The numbers were not there, and what a crazy complicated turn there. Reid, that was really difficult, but I think you're right. I think you had to attack with the construct first, maybe burn that mana, maybe use it to shoot 2 upstairs, force the chump block, but I think it would have been brutal from there. Tough game.
Yeah, all I could say is that was an epic match. Like, all
Yes.
3 games, we got pretty deep into, like, turn 5, turn 6, complicated, gritty board states, and it was, like, still not clear which player was going to win. So,
Yeah.
Close games, the decisions each player was making mattered a lot. You know, playing around your opponent's interaction. Can you surprise them with the Otawara? Can you get your mystical disputes to line up? So really everything you want in a match of Modern. Very cool way to start the show.
Both players played amazing. That's Yuuki still live to get that world championship spot. But man, I gotta really give props to ALMTG. I think he just played. He played like he was us with perfect information that just like saw exactly what he needed to play around. But he did not have perfect information, so it's so much tougher for him at the seat. So big props to both players, and what a way to start the Modern rounds here at the Magic Online Champion Showcase. But we got more Magic, Reid. We got one more backup match here for round number 1. Let's check out the players that we're going to be checking out here to start it off. And we got Jessy Samek here on the left versus Alison on the right here. Jessy's been playing the game for 13 years, only 4.5 here for Alison. Played a lot of Modern matchup from Jessy. Maybe not as much here from Alison, so maybe one of our newer players. Alison, of course, qualified via that Pauper Showcase qualifier, and Jessy spiked one of the gigantic seals here in these MOCS Opens.
What?
And yeah, Reid, I remember we were locked in to commentate this event together, but we both played in those Open events, man. So I guess good thing we didn't do very well.
Yeah, good thing that we didn't have to stress out making the tough decision of whether to play or commentate.
Exactly. I don't know about you, Reid, but I was definitely just throwing my matches in the sealed. It wasn't because, I was losing on my own accord.
One of the awesome things, Corey, about this event is the many different tracks that the players take to get here. And so Alison, I want to shout out as an example of a format specialist where he's the Pauper expert in the field. So you see like lower win rate, number of matches played in Modern. That's reflective of just a different path to get to this tournament. I don't think you should make the leap to say like, well, he's not a skilled Modern player, because clearly when someone has such chops in one format, when you tell them, hey man, next month you're going to be playing competitive high stakes Modern, I have a lot of faith in that player's ability to get into shape, learn the format, and bring their best. So, even though this might seem lopsided based on the player cards we're looking at here, I think this could be anybody's match.
Yeah, well said, Reid. Well said, and always fun to just see the different avenues flood into such a high-stake event, and then see who can really, handle the pressure and maybe learn some formats that they're not too adapt to. Like even in McWinsauce's interview, he's just like, I don't draft. I don't draft at all. It's not like, oh, I draft here and there. He's like, I do not play Cube. But I qualified for this, so I figure it's time to play 40 drafts. 40 drafts he did, and he ended up winning the one that matters. So let's take a look at Jessy's list to see what he brought to the tournament. And this is, of course, a spicy one. Walk us through, your own deck here at the last Pro Tour, Reid.
Azorius Blink. So the idea here is somewhat similar to what we saw from Yuki Ichikawa's Esper Blink deck, where you're capitalizing on creatures with enters the battlefield triggers and or that sort of impending warp type stuff to shortcut a 5-drop creature onto the battlefield ahead of schedule. Now the Azorius version has a much cleaner, more painless mana base. The deck is honestly pretty close to mono white, minus the Quantum Riddlers. And it also leans into that kind of white weenie energy style of gameplay with Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride. So just leaner, faster, more efficient, and trying to put your opponent in a bad spot as quickly as possible.
And I gotta ask you, Reid, this is kind of the joys of having you in the booth with me. Me as a Magic fan and as a commentator, I just love being able to firsthand ask you questions like this. Like, how were the Starfield Shepherds? Because you guys might have been the only players to actually play that card. Did they end up being pretty good for you, or maybe something you regretted in your final configuration?
Well, okay, so the real payoff of the deck is Quantum Riddler. And the first like 10 or 15 games I played with the deck, I was like, wow, this deck is amazing when I draw Quantum Riddler, but I pretty much lose the games that I don't draw Quantum Riddler. So we wanted like more redundant copies of that style of effect. And Starfield Shepherd, like it's definitely not as good as Quantum Riddler, but it also definitely gets the job done. There's also a lot of nice things that it does in terms of just like greasing the gears, helping you come out smoothly where you find that third land, or you find your key 1-drop. Like sometimes we had Mistcaller on our sideboard, or you find a Mockingbird in a key situation. And then a really important point about this deck is Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride, we know these as some of the most powerful one drops in Modern, but the thing about them is they scale in power level the more you draw. Like if you can tell me every game I'm going to have Guide of Souls and 2 Ocelot Prides, I'm really excited to play Guide of Souls and Ocelot Pride because they're just so good in tandem like that. So Starfield Shepherd, more access to those key one drops.
Yeah, 100%. All I do is just picture your guys' team meeting where, you're just saying, we just need to draw Riddler more often, and you just see Hat pop in the room and be like, we got Riddler at home, and just showing a bunch of Starfield Shepherds.
Yeah, we were going deep. We're like, okay, we splash green, so we Eladamri's Call for the Riddler, or we play like Fibble Fifth to just like, be like some crummy cantrip creature, but we had Thraben Inspector in there for a little while, but in the end, I think Starfield Shepherd is the right answer to this question. Plus the Recruiter of the Guard, which I didn't have that one at the Pro Tour, but that's a really nice addition that Jessy and some of the other Magic Online players have started to adapt in the wake of the Pro Tour.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that breakdown, Reid. That's really cool stuff. So let's take a look at Jesse's opponent here with Azorius Blink. So is it Affinity? We have the great joy of you being so close to this Azorius Blink deck that you definitely can feel whether a matchup is good or not. And the new hotness, Affinity, wasn't really a deck that you were preparing for going into it. Well, it was, but not with the weapons manufacturing. How do you like this matchup for the Azorius Blink deck, and how do you like Alison's list?
Yeah, so I have to confess that I kind of underestimated Affinity. Like, I was definitely guilty of that lazy thing where I'm like, you know what? I've got a couple copies of Stony Silence in my sideboard. I'm all set for Affinity. And really, like, that's not the case. This is a well-rounded, robust deck that you can't just slap in one sideboard card and think you're going to be okay. You really need to cover a lot of bases at once in addition to those sideboard cards. So we practiced the matchup, thought it was pretty close to 50-50. I played it once at the Pro Tour and I did lose. So, I think it's going to be tough, and Jesse's going to have to draw the right cards, play tight, thread that needle in order to win. But I do think this is a match that both players have what they need, if their decks are able to deliver.
And if this was a matchup you wanted to shore up, Stony Silence and some high numbers probably would have been what you needed if you felt like you had to respect the matchup a little more?
I had two Wrath of the Skies, 2 Stony Silence. I think I noticed that Jessy doesn't have the Stony Silence, but maybe has some other weapons like extra removal spells or Mystical Disputes. So, Stony Silence is great if you can just land that on turn 2. It really squeezes the Affinity player's ability to play the game. But even that, it's not lights out. Like, you can still totally lose to a Kappa Cannoneer or an Urza Saga if you, for example, mulligan to 5 looking for your Stony Silence. It might not be enough.
All right, well, we can talk about the matchup all we want, but these players do got to play the games to decide who is going to take it down. We're going to be jumping into the match here with Jessy up a game, so was able to take game number 1 against Affinity. That feels like the tougher of the games to be able to win here. So big game here. And now looking at the hand here, starting with Alison, double Blood Moon, that already feels terrible, and Steam Vents, with some other really good stuff going on here. So we're in for a pretty spicy turn here, Reid.
Yeah, the Pinnacle Emissary can lead to some of the most explosive openings in Affinity, and this is one of them. Like, wow, I've got a 1-mana Thought Cast. I've got 2 mana on my first turn, just dumping material onto the battlefield, and also setting up for future turns at the same time. It's not like a one and done situation where you make a bunch of tokens and that's all you have to work with.
I will say, Reid, this is one of the most brutal things I have seen, because the Thundering Falls is nowhere near stock in all the lists. It is a one-of here, and, I wouldn't say this Blood Moon would be, like, absolutely GG, but let me tell you, Blood Moon on this turn would have been quite solid.
Yeah, it would have been... What it would have done is it would have stopped Wrath of the Skies from being a meaningful counterplay.
Yeah, but instead, turn 2 Wrath for 0 here especially if you end up playing EE out here. I mean, this is brutal, right? Like, sure, the Oscillate Pride will die to one of these artifacts going to the graveyard, the munitions token, but otherwise, this still looks like a phenomenal Wrath of the Skies.
Yeah, and speaking with some of the Affinity players at the Pro Tour, they were just like, "Hey, man, this is what you sign up for. Like some number of draws in some number of the sideboard games, you're just gonna have to play out your hand and hope they don't have Wrath of the Skies." But such is life. Like you try to set yourself up with a couple counter spells, Blood Moon disrupt the mana, weapons manufacturing to build out a resilient board. But sometimes it just gets you, and certainly it looks like this is going to be one of those games.
Yep, I would tend to agree. And yeah, you got to think Shuhei at the Pro Tour for day one probably didn't get Wrath of the Sky into oblivion that much, but day two when you go 3-5, things probably didn't go as well for your Affinity deck. But hey, live by the Kappa, die by the Kappa.
That's right.
Looks like Wrath of the Skies was used here, which does use the munitions token to kill the Oscillate Pride. So even though the Oscillate Pride got damage in, it will not make a cat. And oh no, Reid, this is kind of, I was going to say, playing Blood Moon here is actually brutal. I love playing Emissary. And then, Reid, walk us through what happens if Urza Saga is stuck on Chapter 2 with the Blood Moon interaction, which is relatively new for anyone who might not be aware.
Yeah, so back in my day, Blood Moon would
Tuesday.
Blood Moon would just kill Urza Saga. It would, that was the old way that Blood Moon or Alpine Moon against the Saga land would just, interact in such a way that the Saga stuff couldn't continue and Urza Saga would go to the graveyard. That is not the case anymore. So now the Blood Moon does turn the Urza Saga into a mountain, but if it has specifically gained abilities through the progression of the saga, it will maintain those abilities. So the idea with what you mentioned, Corey, locking Urza Saga on Chapter 2, is you want to make sure that it gains the ability to make constructs, and then Blood Moon stops it from advancing to Chapter 3, and then you can be in this frozen position where you can make constructs turn after turn.
Yeah, it's a really cool interaction. So Urza Saga will add not only colorless, but it will add red mana. But the one thing that Jessy is doing quite a nice job of, and it looks like it's going to work out quite well, is, well, yes, the Starfield Shepherd's going to get a 1-drop. Jessy will get to choose whether he wants to then play said 1-drop or ephemerate the Shepherd, yielding yourself another 1-drop plus the ephemerate. Will then find you another 1-drop. So, ephemerating on the Shepherd seems like what I would do. Looks like what Jesse's going to do as well. But the main thing that Jesse's really lining up here is, number one, the 2 basic planes. So Blood Moon is not a problem. But also, Blood Moon is going to land. Jessy gets the great advantage of ignoring it because, well, who cares that you can't cast Mockingbird? And Jesse's going to be able to go even Meticulous Archive as a mountain, and then Witch Enchanter to just blow up the Urza Saga so it's no longer stuck making a bunch of constructs. And I think that's going to be devastating here for Alison.
Yeah, right. Like, if you can take away the Urza Saga and leave the game kind of stuck underneath the Blood Moon without worrying about constructs every turn, you're going to be in a really favorable position.
And the Blood Moon is actually now bad for Alison.
Right. Yeah, totally. The resource advantage generated from the ephemerate, 3 copies of Starfield Shepherd entering, or 3 instances of Starfield Shepherd entering the battlefield, like the disparity of 7 cards in hand against 2 cards in hand is kind of the most meaningful thing going on right now.
So is that what you would do, Reid, Witch Enchanter on the Saga, or do you like any of the other plays? Because, I mean, as cool as that play is and how good it looks right now, I mean, going Oscillate Pride, Guide of Souls, still pretty good as well.
Yeah, both are appealing. I think I do like this one. Witch Enchanter to destroy the Saga, just kind of keep the Affinity deck from generating the critical mass.
Yep. And I mean, that's it. Like, we just saw this Blood Moon now is kind of working heavy duty for Jessy. Like, you can't cast Kappa. You can play the flip side of Sink in the Stupor, which is a mountain. You don't take 3 damage for. And you're one short of actually improvising with the emissary. So nothing's going right here for Alison, it would seem.
So I just had to look up the rules on improvise. I was wondering if it was like Convoke, where like could you use a blue artifact creature to generate blue mana? I think the answer is no. Improvise just specifically references the colored mana in the cost.
Oh, okay. Okay. You know, I think I was calling for that at the desk at the Pro Tour, where like we haven't seen any turn 1 Kappas, but you know, I always thought it would just paired with Emissary that you could tap it with that. So yeah, I guess turn 1 Kappas were even more difficult than I thought. So yeah, I mean at this point then we are completely done. And Alison agrees. That's going to be Jessy Samek here advancing to 1-0 in Modern. And I got to say, Reid, you know, we didn't see game number 1, how everything went down. But game 2, pretty big beating for that Azorius Blink deck.
Yeah, I mean, it was like definitely you get those dramatic moments where, okay, Wrath of the Skies kills 5 permanents on the second turn of the game. So it's not close in the sense of how dramatic and lopsided the game actually was, but you could sort of tell yourself the story of like, hey, that's only a 2 of. If Jessy just didn't have that sideboard card and instead is playing, you know, a White Orchid Phantom on that turn, like how much different is the dynamic? And that's why Affinity, it's just, you know, you're playing the numbers. Like, you know that there's these devastating anti-artifact cards that are out there in the wild, but you're hoping to either be prepared for them when they come or just not face them in those, you know, in those key moments.
Yep, gotta agree. And honestly, that just feels modern, what Modern is too. You know, there's such devastating sideboard cards in that format that metagaming for a tournament is just thinking, what devastating sideboard cards are very prevalent, and maybe try to sidestep a little bit, and or play a deck like Azorius Blink where there's not a clear card that's extremely good against you, you know, and I feel like that's some of the advantage of playing a deck like that. It really feels like 2025 Jund, just reshaped. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I do appreciate that analogy. It's a nice, well-rounded deck, just fair, honest Magic, and that's what Jessy was able to do in the first match.
Definitely your style, as we see that Read the Bones right behind you. You know, we all know that's the type of Magic that you love to play, and we all love watching you play it as well. So that is going to do it here for our first round. But before we go, we're going to talk to you about a few of the really cool things that Magic Online is doing. And the one I want to call out here, Season of Cubes. Being able to have 4 different cubes over 4 weeks that are kind of rotating out. Reid, have you any experience with this kind of event with 4 different cubes over 4 weeks? You a fan?
Well, what I'll mention is that I believe this is done in partnership with the CubeCon event, which is something that I had the good fortune to attend a couple years ago. It's just awesome. Like, the cube community, people are just as into it as, you know, Commander or Modern or Vintage or whatever it might be. Like, people love playing Cube. And so when you get around these folks that are like, oh, I've put so much work into my Cube, I've handpicked all the cards, I've, you know, picked my favorite editions that are meaningful to me, and I want you to be around to play with it. That's really special. It's really fun. And so Magic Online Daybreak Games replicating that experience with the Season of Cube, rotating cubes from rotating creators.
Yeah, really cool stuff. So good on you, Magic Online and Daybreak, because it's so much fun. I've always wanted to make it out to a CubeCon as well. It always falls so close to a Pro Tour that I haven't been able to do it yet, but it's always on my bucket list, and I'm gonna get out there pretty soon for sure. So that's gonna do it here for round number 1. We're gonna take ourselves a short little break, but on the other side, we got 4 players that are still live to take down this Modern trophy, and we're gonna figure out exactly who it is. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.